Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman. We are live with Dr. Andrew Rosentberg. I am excited to be here. How you doing, Doc?
Doing great. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. I've been wanting to get you on. It's been so difficult. I got a big thumbs up that we're live, we're clear, everybody can hear us. Everybody at our Nutridyne family, hello, it's Rob, Andrew. We're here, we're gonna have a good time. They're co-sponsoring this event. We really appreciate that. And I'm happy to have you on, man. It's been a while. I just haven't been able to get you to give me some time because you're just so busy treating patients, writing books, and making appearances.
Absolutely. Well, it's good things come to those who wait, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with you. I love the work you do and your mission of educating people, and so I think it's good we're able to get together today.
Absolutely. We're going to share some what we call nutrition bombs and knowledge bombs and everybody. And we're not going to just talk about vitamin A and vitamin C. We're really going to dig in. So, why don't you tell everybody, what you're doing, where you're speaking and stuff like that. Familiarize them with you.
So I live out in the, flyover country. We're out here in Idaho. It's kind of maybe the polar opposite of urban New York, but health is important no matter where you live. And I have just a brick and mortar clinic. I treat patients in the office. I work over the phone with people who speak English, basically. I say that because, the internet brings everybody together. We have a lot of information on the internet, on YouTube. So we work in a consultation model similar to what you do. We see patients from, like 20 different countries, and we do whatever we can to help people. Rob, it's always a blessing to be able to connect with somebody and do something to help their life move forward. So we kind of blend in the best that chiropractic has to offer. I do a lot of work with kinesiology and applied kinesiology. And then of course, nutrition and functional medicine is it's essential these days. So we just combine all that for the patient's benefit.
Why don't you tell everybody what AK is, applied kinesiology, because I haven't had too many AK practitioners on. So again, familiarize them with what that is.
Yeah, so it's a big kind of verbal vomit, big word, applied kinesiology. And some people go, oh, they raise their hand, they go, oh, I know what that is. I got my bachelor's degree in kinesiology from, the state college, the next town over or whatever. And it's like, okay, that word is the same because of kinesiology in an undergrad situation, they look at the joint movements and the directions that muscles pull. And that's a great thing to study. The way that we would use it in our practice, it's the word applied is real important there, because what an applied kinesiologist can do is through muscle testing the patient, we can just gain information about their level of dysfunction, whether that be structural with muscles or soft tissues, the architecture, the alignment of their spine, but then it can go so much further than that. And we can sort of dialogue with the body, if you will, using muscle testing, using strength or weakness to determine if a treatment would be effective or perhaps to find a hidden problem. So it's just, for me, I love using my hands. I love touching people and laying hands on people. And so being able to muscle test them and have that conversation, so to speak, with their nervous system, you get more information. So in short, I'm biased. You have to keep that in mind. But I think applied kinesiology gives the practitioner an advantage at finding the root cause of problems.
I really like what you said, dialogue with the body. So you're using muscle tests and using specific sort of orthopedic type tests to allow the body to tell you where that patient's at and what may be a course of treatment.
Oh man, it's so true, Doc. It's easy to find the muscle that's too tight that hurts you. But what we have to remember is, why does that happen? And that's what I love about chiropractic in general. I've just loved it from the beginning, the philosophy of trying to figure out why things happen. And so, if somebody has chronic headaches or a shoulder problem or athletic injury on a shoulder, the tight muscle is easy to find. But with applied kinesiology, we can test each muscle and find the ones that are turned off. And that's where the rubber meets the road. If we can find what's not working or not turning on, then we can really move people forward.
So AK, if I were to share it with the practitioners and the patients alike, is a method of finding out. It's a diagnostic method of finding out what isn't firing, what isn't working, and then you're going to apply your chiropractic treatments to try and rectify the problem.
Absolutely. And you know what, Doc, it could be Graston technique. It could be, active release. It could be a dozen different things, but the beauty of AK, as you said so well, is just being able to diagnose what's not activating. Because it doesn't matter how many reps you do or how much rehab you do. If your latissimus dorsi just doesn't turn on, you could do 10,000 reps and it won't turn on. You have to fix the neurology first, as we would say. So
right, and you're very unique in that you use AK as diagnostic, but you also marry it with functional medicine, which both of them, as we know, their origins are root cause resolution. Can you kind of like tell everybody how the left and the right hand meet?
that's a good question. I would say if it is true that I've been successful helping people, I'll take some credit for that, but most of it goes to other teachers and pioneers like yourself. Dr. Bob Rakowski was a huge influence on me. My patients are always like, oh, wow, I can't believe that. That's crazy. How did you figure that out? I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. All I did was learn something else that somebody else figured out, but the functional medicine part of it it makes more sense. Let me say it this way. From a doctor's point of view, a patient walks in and they say, my back hurts. And you put them through orthopedic tests. You don't find anything wrong. But then you decide, well, maybe I'll just test and see if the back muscles facilitate or turn on correctly. And so you lay them on the table, you set the test up correctly, and you're testing, let's say, the quadratus lumborum, and there's just no strength. It would be what a PT might call 4 out of 5 strong. They didn't crawl into my office. They walked. They got out of their car. They walked in. But when you actually test the muscle, it's not working correctly. And so through the course of a short exam, we might determine that they have pain over a reflex that represents gallbladder function. And we know this patient, perhaps a female that's had, a history of endometriosis, of fibroids. They had irregular cycles for many years. So we're starting to get the history, and we see how the history of having a hormone imbalance is showing up now on the exam with pain in the gallbladder area. So then we pick just tying this all together, what you can do with kinesiology is you can select nutrition. You can have patients taste the nutrition, hold it on their tongue, activate the neurology of the gustatory system, the taste nerves. And then you can see the pain go down instantly, and then you can instantly see the back muscle turn on. And that was a big, it's kind of abstract to talk about it over the phone with you without, showing people in real time. But that's one way that it works really well. You can just see pain strength change instantly when you start to do good, stimulate the body in a way that it would help the body.
Well, that was a great explanation, because so many people have asked me about AK. We've had a lot of functional medicine practitioners, but nobody's married to two. And I don't know anybody right now who's really practicing in the forefront that does it like you do. So it's a very unique approach. And my understanding is that you teach a 48-hour at Northwestern Health Sciences.
Yes, sir. I was very fortunate. Like, as I said, I went through Rakowski's program like 4 or 5 times all the way through. And it just captured my imagination, Rob. And my rule in practice, truly, I think you can appreciate this. The number one rule in practice, the biggest risk to any business, no matter what your business is boredom. Rule number 1, don't be bored, right? So AK gives me so many different things to help somebody with that thank God, I've never run out of ideas yet. But yes, it's just combining functional medicine and AK. You can serve people at a deeper level, and that, as much as it helps patients, we get high from that ourselves every time we get to help somebody. I mean, that's kind of our drug. Right?
I hear you without question. And that's something I tell everybody. One of the biggest things that you want to do is go to a doctor who's engaged. And sometimes, whether it's 3 days, 3 months, or 30 years, they've already checked out. And so I feel your energy when it comes to that, because I'm trying to be better every other day. Otherwise, I don't want to be that bored guy. It's been the most horrific thing that I've gone to professionals and they just haven't been engaged. So I speak to that, and I'm compelled by that statement. You wrote a book, which I have here, about functional medicine and epigenetics. I got to write.
You have to be a little crazy to write a book. Yes, sir. That's my baby. It took me several years to write it. I sort of wrote it one blog post at a time. I realized that I could get a little dopamine and a little positivity by publishing a little teeny bit at a time, rather than slaving on it for a few years before anything pops out. But conceptually, Dr. Silverman, the book was written to sort of share this insight that we'd gained in practice up to that point of how to help people with some chronic issues. So we named it Your Genius Body because I really want people to understand you might have been to 20 doctors, you may have been sick for 30 years, and people get really frustrated. They begin to believe that there's nothing that can be done to help them. And I would say to the person out there who feels that way, I mean, I understand how frustrating it can be, all the effort, the money you've invested going to doctors, specialists, but what you need to do is, very often what people don't do well is look at the really big picture and line everything up in order logically. And so that's what I've tried to do with that book, is help people see what should be done first in their healing process. Sometimes people try to fix the third or fourth problem in a row, but they miss the first two that are nearer to them. And then that's why they don't see results, so to speak. So
your book's really about getting to that top cause and going down that tier.
Yes, sir. It's like, it starts with, as the chapters unfold, we bring in a lot of epigenetics and methylation, genetic information, not to just, be the world's biggest nerd and blow it over people's heads. But I do think it's something that is an important subject. And even though it's complicated, if someone's willing to just spend the time to do a little reading, they will understand it. I really tried to make it something they could approach, not just for the PhD geneticist out there,
So define for everybody epigenetics and then tell them what methylation is.
Okay.
And then when you set that parameter, I've got to follow up.
For sure. So big words, big scientific, like verbal vomit. It's not something you're going to listen to overhear a conversation down at the pub or while you're walking through the park, but it's still an important aspect of our health. And so the idea to your listeners, what I would say is there's been this explosion of information around genetics and how they can influence our health. And I immediately got excited about that, but then there's this caveat, maybe this dark edge to this, that if I have this gene, then I will have this disease. And so I think the negative side of this whole explosion of information is that it can disempower people to think, well, look, I did my genetic report, I have a higher risk for depression or anxiety, or I have a problem with detoxification, that's just why I'm sick. Oh, it's in my genes. And so that sort of takes agency away from people. So the thing I want to counter that idea with genes, with epigenetics and this genetic information, it really comes down to the environment. And I was heavily influenced by someone I'm sure you know a lot about, Bruce Lipton, and his book, Biology of Belief, probably the most influential book maybe that I've ever read on science. And he basically proved that the environment rules the roost. So through our choices, through our thoughts, through the healthy behaviors and the nutrients we introduce to our system, genetics turn on and off. And so I really try to hammer that point home to give the reader, the control, or at least the hope that they can make different choices to optimize their genetics. So that's kind of the first 3 chapters kind of points out that idea. But there are a few genes, I wouldn't say they're problem genes, they're just really big choke points. They're big roundabouts, like an Italian village where you have 7 streets going into one big roundabout. Those traffic areas have to be working well for you to experience health. And I go into that quite a bit in the book. And of course, methylation is the most important of those systems.
So epigenetics, what your environment allows your genes to show. So we've all heard this expression and they've heard it here before. Genes are not your destiny, they load the gun, but the firing of the gun is your lifestyle and everything like that. Well, however, for us, that most people in America have a bad lifestyle, so they're going to actually have bad epigenetics. The gene that comes to forefront most is the idea of methylation, which is the MTHFR. So why don't you go through a little bit of that, because you really focused on that and you are a methylation expert.
With this idea of finding the root cause, I was, I don't know if it was maybe God sending me a message 10 years ago when I was in a seminar and somebody said methylation, and that was probably the first time I heard about it I was just in the middle of my studies. And I was like, man, I don't know, there's something about this pathway that interests me. And so I kind of went in the rabbit hole and learned everything that I could. Literally just and the more I learned, I realized it was connected to gallbladder function and cardiovascular risk and cancer, risk, and your mental health, depression and anxiety. And so for the listeners out there who aren't, credentialed scientists or licensed, doctors, this is something you can leverage science for the betterment of your family, your friends. It's not beyond you. And I really try to make that point in the book. But in a nutshell, the reason why methylation is so valuable to understand and to support is that it's a fundamental process. It's like the foundation of our chemistry. So we've all maybe heard the phrase, like, we're carbon-based organisms. And so methylation represents the movement of these carbon atoms around to turn things on and off. And the body's incredible. It never makes mistakes. It'll always do something less traumatic over in this corner to make sure that something on the other side of the body doesn't happen. So even if somebody gets a diagnosis of heart disease or high blood pressure, or heaven forbid, some autoimmune or cancer problem, the body still is not still doing that situation. So when you understand methylation, you understand what makes people have a tendency to be depressed, have a familial tendency to have cancer issues, heart disease, as I mentioned. So, it really comes down to B vitamins. So B vitamins are what support methylation. And so, maybe there's maybe and another way to say this, if I just take a minute to give a metaphor, I think this can help your audience as well. So this question does come up in practice quite a bit. And I use the analogy of the international financial markets. So the US dollar, not a perfect currency, but it's the most liquid. It's the deepest. There's more US dollars out there than everything else. And so it kind of greases the wheels, allows money to move around, people to invest, and all of that. And that's basically analogous to your methylation cycle in your body. So when you run out of, because of certain genetics, the MTHFR gene in particular, it makes it more difficult for certain people to have enough quantity of these methyl groups in their savings account, analogous to the US dollar. And so your body can find a substitute, but it takes longer, it's not as efficient. And so by optimizing the MTHFR pathway, like we talk about in the book, using the right B vitamins, making sure you're digesting them well, and making sure you're getting enough that your body needs, it's like your body has enough of this currency, these little carbon units, to take care of everything, of your growth, your repair, your detoxification, protects your genetics. So that's one way to look at that big subject.
Right. So I just want everybody to know who's watching, feel free to ask any questions. I'll ask Dr. Rosentberg any questions that you put in. So I've got a couple of DMs, direct message. They love to do that. And my phone's, that's why I'm looking down. So let me ask you these. The question was, and I'm going to summarize it. Hypo or hypermethylation? Number one. What's the difference? Second question, this one's really good. How does methylation affect respiratory resilience?
Okay.
So i.e. the cytokine storm. I think they're meeting the cytokine storm.
All right. So let's answer the second one first, not to ignore the first question, because they're both actually really great questions. Austin, you have a great audience here. So looking at the cytokine storm, what we would deduce from that is that the balance between the production of pro-inflammatory chemicals exceeds the body's fire extinguisher production ability, right? So glutathione would be the thing that most people are familiar with. And as it happens to be, glutathione is produced from the methylation cycle, right? It's off a little leg called the Transsulfuration Cycle. So people with MTHFR issues who have 2 copies typically of the 677 or the 1298 variety would be susceptible to not making enough glutathione. And so the way I describe this would be the idea that your white blood cells, your immune system has lasers, flamethrowers, shotguns, bombs they drop from the sky. I mean, they have weapons that science is still figuring out all the weapons that they have. They have the ability to kill anything that we find on Earth. But the problem is, if you send your army into battle without any armor, no clothes, no shields, no vests, no protective gear. And you go, here, white blood cell, take this flamethrower and go kill this, this virus infected cell over here, or this bacteria. Well, it'll kill the bacteria a little bit, it'll kill the virus, but the white blood cell itself will get destroyed. And that just feeds into the inflammatory fire. So that's where the cytokine storm is modulated by having a supported methylation cycle, because as you optimize your methylation with enough folate, B12, B6, B2, you could also optimize it with N-acetylcysteine, you know, products like Nutridyne, one of the companies we love, kind of our main guys, they do a great job. They have the leading scientists working on this stuff, but they have a great, you know, methylation support product out there that does this for us. So it's like I can just give someone one thing rather than having to give them 5 bottles with each individual ingredient. That's the cytokine connection. If we not make the anti when our body fighting, we get killed from the act of fighting because your army is marching around trying to kill guys with no armor. To answer the second hypermethylation question, you know, that is an interesting question. It comes up a lot. It's there's under and over methylation. That's an idea out there, but I would challenge the person, or the idea that I would challenge that idea to say that it's a little oversimplified. And what we have figured out in practice through working with thousands of patients is it's not so much that whether people over or under methylate. It has more to do with how much dopamine they make, is basically what it comes down to. And when I say that is, dopamine is what influences how we feel. Rob, you know, people go to doctors because they don't feel well. Ironically enough, most people don't see us because they're feeling amazing. They come in because they don't feel well. So someone who doesn't methylate fast enough, someone who has an unsupported MTHFR problem that hasn't been taken care of, they tend to have low dopamine. They tend to have symptoms of anger, cravings. They may have excessive sleepiness. They get lethargic. They get apathetic. Just like a toddler who throws a fit when they don't eat food, their dopamine's down. They throw a fit. They get red in the face. They kick. They scream. They throw stuff around, and you give them like a little treat, and they bump up their glucose, and literally 30 seconds later, they're like an angel again. Okay, so that's hypomethylation. It also that hypomethylation would also influence people's risk of cancer and heart disease because of the effect that homocysteine would have building up in our bloodstream that would increase your risk of stroke, that sort of thing. But on the hypermethylation side, to answer this question, again, we're viewing it through the lens of dopamine, because that's what's proven time and time and again to be clinically most relevant. People with high overactive methylation cycles, I love this question. We spend so much time on this in our practice. It's like people make neurotransmitters at a certain rate. If your life gets stressed out, you get a bad phone call, you get stuck in traffic, you meet a jerk on the way to work or whatever, you could just dump even more dopamine than you normally had. And some people, because of other genes related to MTHFR, like COMT or MAO, these other pathways that are involved in detoxifying neurotransmitters, these people, Rob, these are patients who are suffering quite a bit because they end up with insomnia, they end up with panic attacks, worry, sort of their phenotype, their expression is like they worry a lot, they have a lot of anxiety, they have trouble turning their brain off. I ask people, so do you sleep in the car? Do you ever take naps? Do you ever sleep on a plane? And they couldn't do that to save their life, which is strange because like I'm a low dopamine kind of person. I'm more of a slow methylator in my life. So like I can be asleep before the plane takes off, man. You know, it's like, I'm like, you never sleep on a plane. It's so comfy, but you know, I get the white noise and everything. So people tell us their problems through their symptoms. That's another philosophy. I'm sure you know, as we in practice, we've learned to listen to that. So in the book itself, in Genius Body, that first question about hypo and hypermethylation, we spend a lot of time on that in the end of the book. We have what's called the catecholamine bell curve. It's basically symptoms of low dopamine, symptoms of high, and you need to know where you are because different tools should be used for which side of that bell curve you fall on.
So everybody should really test to see if they, with their status of methylation or the MTHFR, which are different. One of the ones that we recommend at NutriDynamite Origin, there's blood tests also that you can do. I got another question. They said, is the product that you were referring to, we're allowed to say product here, Methyl Complete by NutriDyn?
Absolutely. Yeah. Methyl Complete is our sort of go-to all-in-one for people who need to support methylation. So it's got the B6, B2, B9, and it's got the correct form of these. It's got the activated form of folate, which is what's most useful, most important for people with methylation issues, has the correct form of B12, and then it gives you some other nutrients like I mentioned earlier, N-acetylcysteine, and that would increase glutathione, that would protect your cells from the cytokine storm, and it would provide that currency, that methyl currency that we were talking about earlier that your body needs. And so your body, we don't have to tell the body what to do with it. If we can just give it to the body and provide the raw material, the body's smarter than I am, you or anybody else. It'll put the nutrition where it needs to go. It's just people need to know if they have a genetic need for more nutrition. I really think most disease, aside from, no, I would say 99% of people who are sick, in my opinion, have some form of nutritional deficiency. That's the way I think that's the way we kind of approach these problems, isn't it?
Yeah, the stats really reveal that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. It's interesting what you said about the pathway, the methyl pathway stimulating L-glutathione. So somebody just sent me something, and it was obviously, he must be a college student. So he essentially said, decrease, I'm reading it now, decrease methylation, increase histamine. So histamine, we know histamine, mast cells and all that.
Sure.
Increase methylation, decrease, and maybe the increased methylation is making the glutathione. Glutathione decreases tight junction damage. So I know we could be here all day on that, and I know
sure. There's I think there's other doctors out there, other researchers helping patients. I think it's the Walsh protocol that focuses on histamine. We have patients do that testing. They look at copper and zinc and histamine and ceruloplasmin. It's just that what makes the approach we use in our practice a little different than other practices, Rob, is we really look at the catecholamines and this basically the neurotransmitters of stress, dopamine and adrenaline, and whether or not it's like when someone gets stressed. And again, at risk of oversimplifying healthcare, I really believe stress is what makes people sick, right? The world's a stressful place. There's different kinds of stress. There's infections. There's chemical stresses for being in a moldy building. There's just 1,000 ways we can get stressed out. But what brings people to a doctor that I've noticed over and over again is they just don't feel well. And so if we look at those chemicals that change our perception, like our consciousness, like dopamine, I've kind of fallen in love with looking at people through the lens of, oh, there's a high dopamine person. Oh, there's a low dopamine person. And when you help them stabilize that, they feel incredible. So the histamine question is a good one. It's just, again, I would say from my experience, it's oversimplifying the issue, just saying my histamine's high, so my methylation must not be fast. It's just like there's other factors. I mean, I think the hidden problem, maybe like the hidden plague that's messing a lot of our patients up is SIBO. We find that so often, it's mind-blowing.
Right, Sibo, and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The small intestine's not supposed to have bacteria. It's supposed to be in large intestine. There's a multitude of reasons why we have it. And to speak to that, it's very interesting. I've gone on and said multiple times, I think in 3 years, we all talk about leaky gut, but we're probably going to be talking about leaky gut and Sibo, because if you have leaky gut, you can get Sibo, not necessarily the other way. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I know they're very focused on what you do, not to say that you don't do Sibo. And we've got a great protocol for Sibo. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, what's one of the most underappreciated off the radar health problems that you see in your very unique practice?
I think that people need to recognize that they have I think it's going to go back to answer that question. We're going to look at methylation as a system. Okay. People who, when you properly understand methylation problems, people with MTHFR issues that aren't addressing it, you're going to see a ribbon of a story going through their whole life. They have spina bifida when they're born, but it was kind of mild. It went away. They maybe had a tongue tie. They have a leg length inequality. They can have some physical things going on as they're younger, but as they get older, they, suffer from a tendency, like we were mentioning, towards depression. They have gallbladder issues that run through their family. Their aunt had their gallbladder taken out, their mom had their gallbladder taken out, their grandmother had their gallbladder taken out, even an uncle lost a gallbladder. That's common, but that's not normal. And so it's just, I'm hoping that awareness continues to increase on what MTHFR is, because the flip side of being connected to all these different things is that if we fix it, support it correctly, then you just fixed and supported all those different things. So it's like leverage, Dr. Silverman. If we can find something simple that just has a whole lot of leverage across all these metabolic pathways, it's a no-brainer for us to be supporting that. So
excellent. I want to get into some supplements, since we both work with Nutridyne, and everybody always asks me questions why we use certain supplements and etc. So let me get right to it. Obviously, supplements are critical for optimum health, hence the word supplement, supplemental lifestyle, because we all know we're lifestyle doctors. We talked a little bit about failing lifestyle leads to health issues, but you can't shop around and find the cheapest price. So why are some companies better than others at making supplements? I mean, what are you looking for in a company to carry, to give to your patients, your extension of your family?
Absolutely. Great question. And I'd say that compared to the lay person out there who doesn't have an option of practicing, I love the idea of it being called practice, because it's not something that 100% on day one. You just learn as you go. And if you're passionate and not bored, you learn a lot faster than the people who are just ho-humming along, just herder, this is my job. They're just not in love with it anymore. So I've learned a lot about nutrition in the 10 years I've been involved in this. And the company that's really responsible, not just for making good supplements for me, but also educating me, is Nutridyne. And so when I look at a company, I don't just look at how much does the company charge for a product. I want to know about the culture. What's their, what kind of interest, what kind of investment do they make in good quality raw materials? So the way that the supplement industry really works, to the listeners out there, if you haven't, spent time kind of peeling back the facade a little bit, it's a lot like the Wild West. And what I mean by that is, I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing, but it's not regulated, because we all know if it was regulated, everything would be 4 times as expensive, and they probably get back ordered 4 times as often. It'd be a mess. So I'm okay that it's not regulated. But with that being said, you need to know who you're buying your products from. So companies like Nutridyne, what sets them apart is they are absolutely committed to the highest clinical science, right? They have doctors like you and me on board, but I'm a product of their education. So if I'm good at what I do, I'll take some credit because I did a lot of hard work, but I was literally introduced to and educated to the world's best functional medicine doctors by Nutridyne. And so they were always in my head as a company that valued education. So that's an important thing. Does your company that you work with, do they just sell products and pay for advertising, or do they spend their money on investing and like educating people? And by educating doctors, they end up educating a lot of people. So there's that thing. That's an important quality. And then again, the idea that it's like the Wild West, some companies are going to simply copy what the researchers are doing. So someone will publish a research study on vitamin K, K2, the different forms, K7, those derivatives, and they'll say, this is the exact derivative that was used in the study. This is the most effective kind. Another company that's going to cut corners goes, hey, we'll put K2 in our product, but we'll buy it from this cheaper supplier over here. Nutridyne doesn't do that. They're always going to have they just have these really good relationships with companies that are making the highest quality raw ingredients. So of course I'm biased, without sounding too biased, I just want the people out there to know that we work with people who they are almost on death's door. And if we can't help them, if our supplements don't work, they'd really basically their health continues to crash and they don't survive. And so we have a long list of miracles in our practice using nutrition from Nutridyne that works. So that's my insight. I kind of almost feel bad for the consumer because of how much crap they have to sort through to find something good. I mean, it's a difficult challenge. So I would just connect with people that you trust, you know, Dr. Silverman, he's, you know, follow the doctors who are getting good results and what are they using. And, you know, Nutridyne is our number one go-to product for a lot of reasons.
Absolutely. I'm going to piggyback on what you said. I concur with the education. You know, you went to school in the Midwest. I went in the Northeast, and I was able to get education from them. What I like most about it, maybe where I am biased, is that they're big in chiropractic, but also big in functional medicine. So they've always allowed the chiropractor to have their voice when many other people have spoken in only one specific type of practitioners. We have a diversity. Being on that science board, I can tell you that they are open to anything. And as far as the quality is concerned, you know, so I've known Greg for 20 years and worked for them for 12. And the first time I met Greg, you know, Greg's a big guy.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, oh, he's a pretty big guy. I wonder what supplement he's taking, you know, and we were kidding around. And I was asking him about the quality. And he just looked me dead in the eye and he just said to me, remember, my family takes this. It's a family-owned business. And that resonated and reverberated in my head. As far as the consumer, that's a great point. They're always asking. And even if they could get Nutridyne online, it's still not the same as sitting with you, because they need that coach. They need to understand what B vitamin. You're going to test them, because testing, you know, if you test, you're not going to have to guess. And they need that. Everybody thinks, well, I'll take a probiotic. With which one? Or how long? With food. And a great point you said about the K2 and the vitamin D3. Well, you got to take the D3 with food. How much? Again, without the doctor trying to individualize it and personalize it for their genetic outcome, the consumer is really at a loss. And to speak to the quality versus the consumer, we all know that the quality in the doctor arena is much better, hence why Nutridyne is in that arena, because we're going to look at different things. I mean, we're inherently analytical. We're going to say no first before we say yes. The consumer says yes first. So I really thought that was a great breakdown on why we use specific companies. And, you know, you weren't being fair to yourself. Companies call you every week. I know that because they call me. You have your access to any sample that you want. I mean, I'm right here. I'm looking at my phone and I'm saying, would you like my CBD thing? Would you like this? So we get inundated with all of that. I mean, if you think people get marketing calls, doctors in functional medicine get marketing calls from nutrition companies because there's such a vast amount of them.
Totally.
Now, having covered all that with the supplements, give me your top 3 supplements that you would, and I know that you would want to test, but I'm just saying your 3 things that you see most commonly prescribed to your patient base.
Okay, so definitely the dynamic hormone balance powder is just a huge tool in our practice for helping metabolize estrogen. And again, what's nice about Nutridyne's products is, you know, we talked a lot about MTHFR and methylation. So they have that support already built in to this product that has a bigger purpose, which is to really help you metabolize estrogen. So I'm a huge believer. You know, I've come from the Rakowski school of functional medicine, man, and like xenoestrogen toxicity, it's rampant, it's heinous. And we've seen some just incredible miracles treating that. So we use a lot of the dynamic hormone balance. We use lots and lots of the methylation support, the methyl complete, and then probably, again, I had a whole chapter in my book dedicated just to stomach acid and how important stomach acid is. I use a lot of their Nutra HCl because, you know, every year the top 3 selling drugs is either an antidepressant. It's like a competition between a statin, an antidepressant, and the purple pill, the Nexium, to block stomach acid. So if you treated methylation and you help people with their digestion, you'd eliminate like the top 3 need for those top 3 medications in like two fell swoops. So those are we use those all the time in our practice, man. Nutra HCl, the methyl complete, the dynamic hormone balance. It's like the 80-20 rule. You know, they've got a great catalog, but being a human being, I get focused on the 20% that I just rock and roll with, and then sometimes we bring in stuff from the other side of the catalog. You know.
Yeah, it was great. Now, my big 3 are PRMs, pro-resolving mediators. They allow for the resolution of inflammation. For me, I use the Digestive Complete because it's a 3-in-1. It's got a stomach, pancreatic, and bile. And if we want to talk about any kind of digestive issues or Sibo, bile is going to come to the forefront. And I use the Spore Probio because I like the Spore bacteria with the XOS and, of course, the bacterial phage. One of my patients said, they just called in, so you know where this conversation has gone. I can't take methylated B vitamins.
Okay. This is a common problem.
I need some help, doc. She's
Okay.
saying I can't take methylated B.
Okay, so this is why she needs to get a copy of the book, and this is not expensive. You can get a copy for like $7 if you want to just read it on your Kindle. You get one for 15. We don't make money off the book, but we hope that we make the world a little better place, giving people ideas. So the number one reason why methylated B vitamins are not tolerated is this individual already has enough dopamine and probably too much dopamine. So when you dump more methylation donors into their biochemistry, it allows them to make even more dopamine, but that's going to make them feel worse. And when you have a hidden gut problem like Sibo or a candida overgrowth, this is a key symptom that would suggest more investigation should be done on perhaps an organic acid test or some way to test her biome to see if there's some overgrowth. Because ironically enough, B vitamins are like rocket fuel for our mitochondria. I mean, they definitely do that, but they also are food for bacteria. So if you react negatively to B vitamins, it doesn't mean you don't need them. It means that there's something else in the way, probably perhaps a hidden overgrowth of bacteria, or you need to get on nutrition that helps you process dopamine a little more efficiently, because it's going to jack your dopamine up even more. It's like a cup of coffee. I mean, B vitamins make you feel good, and then there's taking so much that you're just redlining, running the motor too fast. That doesn't feel good. So hopefully that gives her some, or he or she, some ideas.
Well, she just DM'd me back. Again, I love these DMs. And she said, I took these tests and she's got leaky gut, both at the tight junctions and at the LPS. So she expressed LPS and she was expressing occludin and zonulin, both in the long and in the short term, but no Sibo.
Okay. Yeah. So there's, Nutridyne has a great catalog of nutrition that helps to dampen the sympathetic nervous system and help process dopamine. So they have great liquid melatonin, they have great L-theanine, they've got the Cortisol Pro, they've got the Stress Essentials Serenity Complex, they've got, they have a whole catalog, like almost a dozen products that are going to help calm down that sympathetic nervous system. So those are, in our practice, we found that to be pretty effective, like the Stress Essentials Relax, kind of the gallbladder / GABA support with the green tea and the B6 and the N-acetylcysteine and whatnot, and taurine. So those are it's a fun part of practice to try to problem solve those things. But, I have patients just like that as well. And that's one of the reasons I started to look at Sibo and gut problems in the whole beginning was I would look at their genetics. They need B vitamins genetically. I'd give it to them and I got a weird response. And I'm like, what am I missing? And that's where it led.
Right. And that's taking the test, going through the supplement, but looking at tiers of tests and not just saying, hey, just take methylated B vitamins. One thing about melatonin, not in reference to what we're talking about generically, because so many people have asked about it. Melatonin is great for the cytokine storm, great for sleep. It's good for the cytokine storm, because it decreases inflammation. It's also great for reactive oxygen species. And melatonin is also shown to ameliorate a lot of issues with LPS. So anytime I get a chance to share that, people think it's just a sleep factor. But
they're afraid to take it. They think it's going to cause some like long-term addiction or something. I'm just like, it's like manna from heaven. You should take it when you get a chance.
Or something. It's not. So I want to know, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, we have a YouTube channel if they'd like to see more of our videos. We have about 75 up there. It's Beyond MTHFR. That's our kind of our research project. They have a website they can go to as well, beyondmthfr.com. And I must admit, it was heavily updated for many years. It's kind of haven't put anything new up there in a little while, but the articles still get tons of hits, so it's helping people. And then we have a brick and mortar practice, redmountainclinic.com, and like I said, we work over the phone and in person. So we're just trying to make the world, there's a lot of problems out there we can't solve, but certainly there's a lot that we can, and we want to work as hard as we can on helping people move forward. And it's just, it's a fun process. So we're lucky to be able to do what we do, man.
What drove you into chiropractic?
I was just a unhealthy, stressed out person most of my life. Wasn't raised in a super healthy environment. And, I was suffering quite a bit at 19. I had a lot of back pain. My best friend's dad was a chiropractor, and he really opened my eyes. He set me straight physically, but he would just, I don't know, man, he really had a big influence on how I started to think. And a few years later down the road, I was working in like the civil engineering, land development world, working on a computer, doing drafting. And I was like, I want to be, what's the best compliment you can pay to someone is to be like someone. So he led me down this journey, and I was like, been in school like 3 months in chiropractic college, and I met Bob Rakowski, and I was like, that's the smartest, this is the coolest stuff I've ever seen. Like, that's the smartest person I've ever seen. Like, I don't even know what he's talking about, but I got to learn more about it. So, I've been a lucky person, been blessed to be led in those directions, but that's it. Like I said, I don't want to be bored, man. And life's short, and I want to solve problems. I love solving problems, and there's really never been a better time to be alive, if you like to solve problems, right? I mean,
no doubt about it, because America's got a big health problem. It's called the health pandemic. This has been great. Stay in touch, man. It was hard to get you on. We're going to do this again.
Sure. Any other questions while you got me here? Anybody else? Or
No, right now it looks like we're having a little technical difficulty, but they can see us, but they didn't sign in. Whatever questions I get, I'll get to you, and we'll put it in the comment section. So everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman, always yours in health. We'll see you soon.